Hey everyone, in this episode I'll show you how to paint your backdrop for Revival. This is all about capturing the essence of a big breezy sky. Let's get started. Start by setting up your drop-down tables big enough to fit 2 of your 1/2-inch foam panels on top of them. Use a drop cloth to protect your space and lay the 2 panels out next to each other. You'll want these to be fully painted in the Cotton Blossom color and dry before you start this next step. Next, we are going to use our extra wide roller and our sunken pool colored paint, and we're gonna add the first detail layer on top of our backdrops. Get a nice even coating of the blue color onto your roller. And then we're gonna go in on top of our backdrop and we're gonna make large, breezy, sweeping gestures with our roller. Make sure your 2 backdrops are pushed together and they're square on the top and bottom, because what we want to do is create marks that travel from one backdrop panel onto the other, and it looks like a seamless, continuous painting. So now that everything is lined up and square, we can go in, and I'm gonna start at one side, and I wanna make a big, slightly curving, think breezy gestures. Go all the way across with that one. And maybe I'll come in here from the top. Do another. I'm giving them all a slight curve so that it feels nice and airy. You definitely don't want to overwork it. Try to keep things to one single pass so that the width of the mark is consistent all the way through. So while this is still wet, I'm gonna get my shop rags and I'm gonna add the brushy texture to all the blue that I just painted on. Starting at one end of the blue paint, I'm gonna hold my rag as wide as I can and line up one end of it with the edge of the blue paint. And then following the same gesture as the blue paint, I'm just gonna drag the cloth through the paint. You can see it's sort of leaving these streaky trails. They go nice and smooth. And we start to get the illusion of a giant brush stroke going through the blue area. So next, since my cloth is not quite as wide as the brush stroke, I'm gonna go exactly to where I left off on the other end and follow the exact same gesture so that all the lines I'm making are sort of parallel to each other, even though they're curved. And then I'm gonna do that one more time to finish up this whole blue mark. It's not so good. The fewer passes you can do this in, the more successful it's going to look. So try to go as wide as possible without crossing over any of the other lines you've already done, so everything all moves together and just repeats the big blue gesture. And once that cloth gets saturated with paint, go ahead and get a fresh one. Again, I'm using my fingers to apply pressure and sort of give it these streaky marks that run through it so that those will read like the brush marks in a giant paint stroke. If your window scenario has a 3rd panel and you don't have the space to lay out all 3, start by doing the previous treatment on the first 2. Once they're in this stage, take one panel off and set it aside. pull the other panel over to the edge of the table, and then place your third panel against that one. Now we're going to use the same painting technique as we did before to connect these two together. Place your roller where one paint mark leaves off and go ahead and bring it onto the next panel, and repeat this process to get the pattern to travel all the way across all three panels continuously. Now again, while everything is wet, we're going to use our cloth technique and drag the brush texture into everything we just painted, trying to blend this panel into the one that was already there. So now that our layer of the Sunken Pool blue color is dried, we're ready to go back in with the same backdrop color. This is your Cotton Blossom paint. We're gonna load that paint onto our wide roller, just like we did with the Sunken Pool color. And then we're gonna go in on top of this and do the same type of gesture with our backdrop color to sort of overlap them. And I'm gonna be looking for spots where maybe the blue is not as successful or not as interesting, and I'm gonna protect the areas where my brush stroke effect looks really good. So I'm gonna come in here with this and use the same type of big, broad, sweeping gestures that I used before to roll across. And they don't necessarily have to go all the way from one to the other. If you like where one ends, you can leave it and start a new one. So I'm gonna come in here at the corner, sort of intersect this blue mark and go out again. So now, while everything's still wet, I'm gonna take my shop rag and do just like I did before, lining up the edge of the rag with the paint and dragging through it, following the same curve that I rolled with the roller to get a brush stroke effect. See how we get a nice big area of blue showing through there, and it gives that streaky brush stroke effect? That's what we're after. So now that these two are done, I'm gonna remove the one on the end. Repeat the same method of sliding in the third panel to create a continuous backdrop.